Without any further ado, let me welcome Michael Connelly. Please give him a hand.
I guess I got my microphone turned on now. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Yeah.
This is what it's all about. This little bitty booklet that I wrote that contains the original version of the Constitution. Each article, each amendment, each section. And then I made my comments about what it really means. And I had 2 PhDs call me shortly after this booklet came out, and they said, you know, until we read your booklet, we did not know that this phrase, separation of church and state, was not in the Constitution. And that's the problem. People don't know what's in here. If you don't know what your rights are, you're not going to know when you lose them. And that's what's happening. We're going to lose them. We've sold about 7,000 copies of this already, and if you're interested in getting it for schools, I don't take any royalties off this. I roll it all over into discounts for schools. We sell them to schools for cost, which is about $2 a piece. And they bought 500, Rotary Club in Hondo bought 500 a couple of years ago to give out to the schools there. Because our kids don't know. They don't know anything about the Constitution. They don't know what's happening to their freedoms. And a lot of people just get this little booklet to carry it around in their pocket or their purse. And the thing I like about it is this one's a little beat up, because if you get up to some liberal person who's giving you a hard time and starts saying something stupid, you can whack it with it. It works really good. Gets their attention. But seriously, that's what it's about. And that's what my family's about. My father served in World War II. I've written a best-selling book about his unit, 87th Chemical Mortar Battalion. They landed the second wave at Utah Beach. Were in combat for 326 straight days. Battle of the Bulge, Hurricane Forest, you name it. Nobody ever heard about them. They fired the big 4.2 mortars. So I've written a book and it's become a bestseller. My oldest boy is finally getting married in a couple of weeks. Reason, he's 41 years old. The reason he hadn't gotten married before, he hadn't had time. Since 9/11, he has done 94 months in combat. That's 8 years. 4 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq, and 1 in some place that only he and I can talk about with each other. And now he's going to get married. They've given him a week for his honeymoon. He's going back to Germany to a base there. He's going to be doing some stuff in North Africa, which again, we didn't really talk about. My youngest is a Black Hawk pilot, and he is right now recruiting for the Louisiana National Guard. The point of all that is that my oldest boy, let me tell you a story about my oldest son, because his thing that he always wanted in his lifetime was to outrank his old man. I was a captain. And when he finally made major, I told him, I said, I don't care if you outrank me, I'm still not going to salute your sorry regret. He said, I know. But he's a major now and is about to become a lieutenant colonel. But on his, I think this is his 3rd or 4th tour, his 2nd tour in Iraq, he was stationed in Mosul. And he's due to be back in Virginia on a Saturday, back to his base there after his 6 month, or this was a year-long tour. And he's had tours from 6 months to 18 months. And he's due to get back to Virginia, and this is Thursday morning. He's due back on Saturday. I get up, I'm half asleep. I got my coffee in my hand. I turn on the internet, and there's an email from Sean. And it says, check this out, Dad, it's really neat. So I turn on this video, and here's a video of an American convoy barreling down a highway outside of Mosul. There's an armored vehicle, an armored SUV they're filming from, and another armored vehicle. All of a sudden, a car on the side of the road explodes. The front of the SUV caves in flames. You hear automatic gunfire break out. The camera goes black as it's bouncing around first, then it goes black because they're trying to get out of the burning SUV. You still hear the automatic weapon fire even when the camera's blank. A minute later, the camera comes back on, and they're filming an American soldier kneeling down on the highway, firing at the bad guys. And the cameraman says something to him, and the kid looks up at the camera and grins. And it's my son, Sean. And like an idiot, I'm yelling at the computer screen, "Son, focus! You're not in a high school football game waving, 'Hi, Mom.' You're in a firefight in Iraq, come on." They never talked about that one on the news. You know, you always hear about convoy ambushes. Well, they took the story to a New York Times reporter who refused to print it. Why? Because we won this one. We had no casualties. They caught the bad guys out in the open and they clobbered them. Now, well, I say that there were no casualties. They tried to award one Purple Heart, and that was to Sean, because he was in charge of the convoy and he was in the lead vehicle. And when the explosion occurred, the gunfire started, he jumped out to organize the defense. When he jumped out, he sprained his ankle fairly severely. And that would happen in combat. So he was entitled to a Purple Heart. And he wouldn't take it. And I asked him, why not? I said, legally you're entitled to it. He says, every night I'd go to the hospital in Mosul, and I've seen the kids in my unit. They're all shot to pieces. He says, they should get Purple Hearts, not me. And I said, well, I'm very proud of you. He said, one other thing, I'm not John Kerry. I think I was proud of him. But my son's pretty fearless. All of them were. We lost one 3 years ago. But the sons have been pretty fearless, and they've done their jobs. Sean's primary job is to hunt down IEDs and either defuse them so they can study them or detonate them. And he teaches other people to do this. He really doesn't appear to be afraid of anything. I mean, when he was in college, he helped pay his way through college as a professional rodeo cowboy riding bulls. But you know, he is scared of something right now. He is nervous about something. And it's something that I'm nervous about, and a lot of veterans are nervous about. And that is the fact that they are being denied their Second Amendment and Fifth Amendment rights to the Constitution. I've written articles about this. I've done radio talk shows about this. I have my own radio talk show, and we talk about it all the time. I've made speeches all over Texas, in fact, all over the country, on this very subject. And still, most people don't know what's going on. What these veterans have happening to them is they're receiving a letter from the VA that says, because of your physical or mental disabilities, we're going to declare you incompetent to handle your own financial affairs. And we're going to appoint a fiduciary to represent you. And the fiduciary program has been around for a long time. It was a good program. It was designed to help elderly veterans who might be suffering from dementia and forget to pay their bills, and usually a family member would be appointed to do it for them. And they would do it for free to his family. Now the fiduciaries get 5% of the veteran's income. So it's become a big business. There's a lot of people out there making a lot of money off of this. Excuse me, I've been doing radio talk shows so many the last few days that if I start sounding like Donald Duck, you'll understand why. But the veterans are getting these letters. They are told they have 60 days in which to respond and prove that they are competent. Now, there's something in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution about due process. That means that the government cannot take away your life, liberty, or property without due process. That means the burden of proof is on them, not on you, not according to this letter. The burden of proof is on the veterans. They have to do it at their own expense. The presumption is that they are incompetent. We are representing at the United States Justice Foundation veterans all over the country on an individual case basis. We're charging them absolutely nothing. We're raising the money independently, and we're trying to raise the money for a major lawsuit, class action lawsuit. We're also working with Chuck Grassley and his committee, the Senate Judiciary Committee, because they've gotten into this now. We're working with the attorneys for Wounded Warriors Project. Finally, people are waking up. Because let me tell you what happens once they're declared incompetent. And the letter tells them this. And you know, sign up for my email list out there and email me, and I will send you a copy of these letters, because this is incredible. The letter then goes on to say, once you have been declared incompetent, you can no longer own, purchase, possess, or transport firearms or ammunition. If you do, you're guilty of a felony. Veterans are being disarmed. When I wrote the original article and broke this story a little over 2 years ago, there were 159,000 veterans on the NICS list. That's the National Instant Criminal Background Check list. Because, by the way, you automatically get put on that list, which means you can't go legally purchase a firearm. Now we estimate there are 200,000 on that list. And it's growing exponentially. Veterans are being disarmed. Let me tell you why they're declaring him incompetent. Minor PTSD. They've ever been depressed. They lost a buddy in combat. They were depressed for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. They automatically are declared to be incompetent. They let their spouses pay the family bills. They're incompetent. We have a veteran in Texas near Canton, where I live. I've got the letter they sent to him, declaring him incompetent because he has the bank automatically pay his bills every month out of his checking account. These are the reasons. This is in writing. I've got it in writing from the VA. Now, once they're declared incompetent, then, and we had to file suit against the VA, and we won to get this information because they refused to respond to our Freedom of Information Act request. We wanted to know what the legal reasoning was behind declaring them incompetent for these reasons, and secondly, giving their names to the FBI. Well, we finally got a confidential memorandum between the FBI and the VA, in which the VA says that they will turn over to all the names of all veterans who they've declared incompetent to the FBI, and the FBI will in turn declare them to be mentally ill to the point of being a danger to themselves or others. That's the only criteria they have for putting them on the NICS list. Either that or they have to be a convicted felon or a known drug abuser. Well, I told you we were working with Senator Chuck Grassley. Excuse me. His subcommittee, or his Senate Judiciary Committee, we're working with the chief investigator, and we sent them a copy of that memorandum. And they started doing their own digging, and they found out that of the people on the National Instant Criminal Background Check list who have been declared to be mentally ill to the point of being a danger to themselves or others, 99.3% of those are veterans. The law requires that they be adjudicated to be mentally ill. Adjudication means you have a hearing in front of a judge, or at least an administrative judge, not according to Eric Holder. He decided that adjudication meant that anybody who works for the federal government, even as an independent contractor, can declare a veteran incompetent to handle their own financial affairs. And they will automatically be put on the NICS list, no questions asked. So we got 200,000 veterans out there on that list. Why are they doing this? There's 23 million of us. We all took the oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. By the way, the President of the United States took a similar oath, as did the members of Congress. And there are criminal penalties for violating that oath. Under federal law, if you do something to denigrate the Constitution or try to destroy our constitutional republic, you can be put in jail for up to 1 year and fined up to $10,000 for each offense. That's just for violating the oath of office. Based on that criteria, I've calculated that Obama owes us about 492 years in jail right now. And that's one reason I drew up those articles of impeachment that Pastor Greg talked about and sent them. And by the way, there's been more than one member of the House now that we understand has sent those to the House Judiciary Committee. But what's happening to the veterans is unbelievable, and we started investigating this, we started working on this, and we started uncovering other things. We helped break the stories about the veterans who were dying because they couldn't get health care. We represent a 93-year-old World War II veteran. This man has throat cancer. He couldn't get treatment from the VA. They wouldn't schedule an appointment for him. So he's using his benefit money for his own treatment. An employee of the VA comes to see him and says, "You're not competent to handle your own affairs. I'm going to take care of it for you." Well, number one, there's no criteria in the law that allows a VA employee to be collecting money to take care of a veteran. But the veteran argues with him and he says, "I can handle my own affairs." The guy says, "Well, that's all right, I'll tell you what, I'll just monitor. You go ahead and write the checks and I'll just, monitor what you're doing." But, so he appoints himself the fiduciary. Next thing you know, the veteran's checks stop coming. He starts asking the VA what's going on. They don't know. They're in charge of the checks. They don't know. We start working with him. His bank starts working with him. We finally track down the checks. They're being sent to another bank account in another state in the name of the wife of the VA employee who's appointed himself this guy's fiduciary.
Oh my gosh.
And we're finding out more and more about that and that type of thing. And that was one reason we submitted 4 more sets of Freedom of Information Act requests. One of the VA wanted to know about the fiduciary program. Because I told you it's big business. We think that some of these people that are being appointed actually work for corporations. They're former VA employees. They're working for corporations that are doing nothing but becoming fiduciaries for veterans. I mean, if a veteran's getting $2,800 a month and you're getting 5% of it for doing nothing, you multiply that by a lot of veterans out there that are on this program. There's a lot of money to be made by doing this sort of thing. So we asked the VA about that. We asked the FBI why, because this is something else we found out is happening. We occasionally will win a veteran's appeal. Oh, and by the way, if the veteran has the right to appeal, once the VA has declared him incompetent, he can appeal. But he's told by the VA, if you do, we're going to suspend the payment of your benefits. So you won't be able to feed your family for the 2 to 3 years the appeal will take place. That's one effort of extortion. We've just uncovered a second effort in the last couple of days. And I'll tell you about that in a minute. But we asked the FBI why, once a veteran was declared to be competent, that the ruling was reversed, they refused to take him off the NICS list. They said, that's not our problem. Let them sue us. So again, the veteran is at their expense, except it's not our expense because we're doing it for them. Then we asked the Department of Homeland Security, why do you list a veteran as the top of the list of potential domestic terrorists? Just because they're veterans. And then we sent the Department of Defense a question because we found out that the DOD is now going after active duty military, people in the National Guard, people in the Army Military Reserves, and declaring them incompetent to handle their own financial affairs. And they're giving them the letter, but they're only giving them 5 days to respond. We just won one of those. We clobbered them on that one. But we want to know what the heck DOD is doing out there, giving them 5 days to respond. And here's how ridiculous it's got. Guy here in Texas was in Iraq, 25th Infantry Division, comes back after a year in combat, has some PTSD issues, but they get resolved fairly quickly. But he gets a letter from the Department of Defense telling him that he's incompetent. He cannot own a firearm, but he's still on active duty. So what do? They send him back to Iraq for another combat tour. He can't own a firearm in the United States, but he can go over there and carry one. That's how ridiculous this has gotten. But here we have these veterans who are being declared mentally incompetent to the point of being a danger to themselves or others. The government is saying you're too dangerous to be allowed to own a firearm. Oh, and by the way, we just found out in the last couple of weeks that wives, spouses, children of these veterans are now being told, since you live with a veteran who is a danger to himself or others, you can't own a firearm either. So they're not just trying to disarm 23 million veterans, they're trying to disarm their families to boot. Because let's face it, we're a danger. We're a danger to the people that want to run this country as a dictatorship, that want to destroy this constitutional republic. But they declare the veterans to be with danger to themselves or others. And now they're coming to these same veterans, and I just talked to one of them 2 days ago. They come to him and they say, okay, you're on the next list, you're incompetent, you're a danger, but we'll sell you back your Second Amendment rights. All you have to do is surrender your VA benefits. Now, there's too dangerous to be allowed to carry a firearm, but now they're going to get the firearm back if they give the government back their money, or whoever gets the money. Because that's our next question. Who's the money going to go to now? I suspect the same people who are collecting the fiduciary fees, except now they'll get the whole pot. So, you know, you got total corruption going on. And I, for one, you know, we're fed up with it. Oh, thank you. We're getting fed up with it. And we're fighting them every step of the way. And like I said, we're working with the Senate Judiciary Committee to try to do something about it. But we need help. First of all, if you are a veteran, or you know of any veterans who are in this position, have them contact me. We will represent them for free and do what we can for them. We're looking to raise enough money to file a class action lawsuit. I think we got one that we can win. I mean, you know, this is so clearly an abuse of constitutional rights that we could win it, but it's going to cost $250,000 $500,000. And we're a fairly small organization. We don't pay a lot of salaries. We don't pay a lot of people at all. We have a lot of volunteers that work for us. And so we're trying to raise the money to do this. But if you know a veteran, have them contact me. Michael at usjfmail.net. And you can get my cards out there, my business cards from my USJF. You can also get the cards so you can access my blog. Because I'm writing articles about this on the blog. And one of the things I mentioned the other day was how they're expanding the program. I've said if you're veterans, we can help you. But guess what? If you're civilians, you're probably going to be coming to us for help also. Because they're expanding the program to include the civilians and not just the families. My fiance recently went to see the doctor for the first time under Medicaid. And she was asked a series of questions, and the doctor was very apologetic. He said he was mandated to ask these questions. One of them was, do you own a firearm? Veterans have been asked this for years. And they've been contacting me and saying, do we have to answer? And I said, tell them it's not applicable. Just refuse to answer. Don't say yes or no or maybe, just say it's not applicable. But they've been reporting back to me that they've been threatened with losing their benefits if they do that. Oh, and by the way, we've got 2 confirmed cases of this in Texas. Veterans are going to the VA, and if they got tattoos, they're being asked to remove their clothes so their bodies can be examined to see if they have radical tattoos. Now, what's a radical tattoo? Don't tread on me, God bless America. What about the 4th Amendment, folks? When did that go away? But now the civilians. We have been fighting, and I prepared memorandums on this on behalf of the United States Justice Foundation. We submitted them to the Department of Homeland Security, among other places, but BATF, HHS. HHS is following a executive order by Obama, and don't get me started on executive orders because I can tell about those, how unconstitutional those are for days. He issued an executive order basically abolishing the HIPAA law. That is a law that protects the privacy of your medical records. They're abolishing that law. They're going to turn over your medical records to who? The FBI. If you have anything in your records indicating you've ever been depressed, you've ever taken medication for ADD or ADHD, if you've ever had PTSD following an automobile accident or something, then it'd be combat. Your medical records are going to be sent to the FBI, and you're automatically going to be added to the NICS list. And you may not even be told you're on it. A lot of veterans aren't told they're on it until they go to try to buy a gun. BATF has changed the definition of mental illness and what it means to be adjudicated to be mentally ill to the point of being a danger to yourself or others. Like I said, it used to mean a hearing. Well, now BATF has decided that if a judge had, in the past, if a judge found you to be mentally ill in a court setting and sentenced you to a mental institution, for observation, then you would go on the NICS list, which I didn't think was completely fair, because suppose they found out there was nothing wrong with you, then you have to fight to get your name off the list. But now the new rule is that if you have ever seen a psychiatrist or a psychologist under court order, your name goes on the NICS list. They consider that to be ordered, adjudicated to be mentally ill and sent to a mental institution. Now, what does that mean? Well, I practiced law for 27 years in Baton Rouge. I didn't like family law particularly, but I did it because it helped pay the bills. One of the things that was almost automatic among all the judges in Louisiana was that when there was a divorce case going on and there was custody involved, the judges would routinely order all of the children and the parents to go separately to see a psychologist and be evaluated. Usually nothing was found wrong with anybody, but it helped the judge decide who would get custody and visitation, etc. And it was a precautionary measure. Now, under the new BATF rules, that means you have been voluntarily sent to a mental institution, even though it was an outpatient thing, and your name goes on the NICS list. If soldiers, veterans are being told, surrender your benefits and we'll give you your gun rights back, how long is it going to be before people on Social Security are being told, we're going to take away your guns unless you surrender your Social Security benefits or your Medicare benefits, or you work for a company that has a contract with the federal government. Everybody who works for that company is going to be disarmed. This is no game. This is getting dead serious. And we are fighting it to the point where we sent out those Freedom of Information Act requests and had one of our media partners do it under their letterhead. I wrote them up and we sent them on their letterhead to try to get a quicker response. And what came back with the green card showing that they had received from the agencies. Well, we got one response, and that was from the Department of Homeland Security, and they said, what list? You don't know anything about a list, listing people as potential domestic terrorists. It's on their website. You know, they don't know about it. It's on their website. So I said, all right, let's sue them. Let's sue all of them. So I called him up and I said, send me the information, send me the little green cards, and send me the originals of the letters, copy of the originals of the letters. 2 days later, I hear from him, he says, Mike, somebody broke into my office. Everything's gone. The files are empty. The hard drives have been erased. The next day, they broke into his office again and destroyed all his telephones. I say broke in, there's no sign of a break-in. The police are baffled. This was done by professionals. And I'm pretty sure I don't know who they are. But this was done by professionals. Now, all of a sudden, this guy just happens to be the producer of my radio show, which I do every week. And I do dozens of shows a week, not my own. And I do them all on the same phone from the same location in my office. And all of a sudden, 4 weeks in a row, my show has gone dead. In the middle of talking about the Constitution. And also, I have an email list. I send out notices whenever I post a new article on my blog, which is on the Constitution. That list, if you want to get on that list, you can sign up out there. I don't do forwards. Nobody else gets the list. You'll strictly be notified when I do an article on the blog. But they have gotten a hold, apparently, not of my list, but the times and everything of when we do my show. Even if I don't do it that day live, even if we record it, we're getting hit. And we don't know who's doing it. But we get a pretty good idea who's doing it. The thing I'm trying to figure out is what did we ask that shook them up so bad? What was in those Freedom of Information Act requests that we asked that shook them up so bad? But anyway, they're going after my show, so if you want to find out about the show, you can sign up for the email list out there. And take a look at some of the, I brought copies of my novel to sell tonight, along with copies of my book about my dad here in World War II. And my novel, by the way, is called I'm a Yaley, A Story of America. It's a patriotic novel, and the left hates it. which pleases me no end. They're calling me a gun nut, and racist, and everything else, because I talk about the Chinese communists, and I talk about the Syrians, and I talk about the Islamists, and so I'm a racist and I'm a gun nut because America rises up to defend itself. Anyway, take a look at this stuff out there. And have I got time to answer a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Okay, I will try to take a couple of your questions. Yes, sir.
If you got a question, John, here.
If you're a veteran, is there any kind of profile or precursor or indication that you might go on this list?
Well, first of all, right now, they're only going after people who are actually receiving benefits from the VA. Now, I was in for 13 years, active in reserve, but I was never, back in those days, you had to be on active duty for 180 straight days to get VA benefits. So I never got them. So they haven't come after me yet. That doesn't mean they can't. But so far, the veterans that are doing this or having this done to them are all people who are part of the VA system. And we suspect they'll expand that soon, but that's where it stands at this point.
I just wanted.
Yes, sir.
Hey, hang on a second, I got one right here.
I just wanted to verify. You said you had cards out in front.
Yep. There's business cards for my blog and for the United States Justice Foundation, and also the Constitutional Law Alliance, which is my private nonprofit which handles the sale and distribution of the booklets.
My question is, ultimately, why do you think it's happening? What is the end game?
The end game is to disarm the American people. I point out the parallels all the time. Years ago, I read a book called Mein Kampf. It was a blueprint written by Adolf Hitler for how he would take control of Germany. Now, I know that Obama doesn't have a Bible on his nightstand in the White House, but I think he's probably got a copy of Mein Kampf. And he consults that because how did Hitler do it? He's elected Chancellor of Germany. First thing he does is totally nationalize the healthcare system, believing if you control access to healthcare, you can control the people. Secondly, he starts disarming the German people, beginning with the veterans. Because the World War I German veterans had taken an oath of office to their constitution and to their country. Then he started purging the military of officers and enlisted men that did not agree with him, that did not hold loyalty only to him. You notice we've been purging a lot of our enlisted and officers, not just high ranking. And who's he trying to get to replace them? Illegals. He wants illegals to be enlisted in the military. They got no loyalty to this country. They broke our laws to get here. But they're going to be the ones in charge now. And then Hitler started using mental illness, psychiatry as a weapon of tyranny, declaring people mentally ill, anybody that disagreed with him. That's starting to happen to our veterans too. So that's the end game. The end game is if you want to take over this country, you want to destroy this constitutional republic, you've got to deal with the people who might stand up and fight. And let me tell you, a lot of the veterans I know, particularly the young ones, and this is what's a shame about all this, is they won't go to the VA, even if they're sick and entitled to benefits. They won't go. They're going underground. They're getting ready to lock and load.
Amen. I appreciate a lot of the things that you're saying, and Greg and I have talked about a lot of stuff also. There's a double-edged sword going on here. As everybody knows, by election November next year, the debt's going to be $20 trillion. And every month that goes by, another 11,460 people added to Social Security. And another issue is that VA currently costs the government about $75 billion a year, and it's going up 14% a year. So the problem is this whole activity has another double-edged sword, which is to take the money away from VA, stop spending money on Social Security, and use some kind of means or method to stop the debt. And unfortunately, this really is bad because nobody else knows how to do basic math. That's the basic problem. We spend way more than we have. My problem is this is where the money should be going. This is the money that was promised. And what you're saying sounds so incredible, but it's true because it's all related together, and you got to fund Obamacare from something. And that's the problem. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight that, everybody to think about what some of these statistics are. And that 11,468 a day, that goes on for the next 12 years, going on Social Security. So we have to think about that too. Anyway.
Yeah, I belong to a group that's meets in Dallas about once a month, and it's made up of former military intelligence officers, former CIA, former Secret Service, former FBI, and some people who, like me, I was a military intelligence officer. We still get intelligence briefings, and we can't talk about what we hear outside of the room, but let me tell you, it's getting really bad. It's getting really scary out there. I mean, our borders, southern borders, are wide open. ISIS is already here, folks. No matter when they're coming, they're already here. And we're very concerned about the repercussions of that. But one thing that we got going for us is so many of us are armed. They found out in Garland, it's stupid to take on Texas law enforcement. Pretty stupid to take on anybody in Texas, you know. I can see me as President of the United States getting up and saying, you know, I think all of you people are stupid, and I'm going to put something over on you. I'm going to do Obamacare. I'm going to lie to you about what it means and all this stuff. And, you know, I can get up and say that just about anywhere except Texas. Here you'd probably shoot me right off the stage, and I would deserve it. Any other questions?
Last question.
No, there's a gentleman right here who's been working the
I just wanted to know if you've been talking to any other veteran organizations, what are they saying? Like American Legion, et cetera.
Well, I'm the past commander of American Legion post in Kerrville for 2 years, and unfortunately we haven't been able to get the American Legion to do anything. Somebody wrote an anonymous blog for the Legion website that said all of this was untrue. This guy claimed to be a veteran advocate but wouldn't give his name. And so the Legion basically sat on their hands, and so is the VFW, because they're both chartered by the federal government. And they're scared to death of having their charters revoked. I think that's part of it. But local chapters are waking up, because this is happening to veterans in local chapters of the VA and the American Legion. And now we got Wounded Warriors, which represents thousands of wounded veterans out there. They're working with us directly. So I think the veterans organizations are going to start coming around. And if you're a member of one of these organizations, talk to your local chapter. If they want documentation of all of this, we got the documentation. I mean, the letters say what they're going to do, and then the letters say we've done it to you. So there's no question about that.
Thank you. Michael Connelly. Let's give him a hand.